5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I very much appreciate the passion of this argument and the discussion we're having here today. I also want to just make it very clear that Ms. Gibson is here for a certain testimony, certainly not to condone any of the things that was just brought up by my colleague. I also want to just mention that despite the ongoing improvements in safety for miners and other occupations that, and despite Minnesota's high-quality protections, the Iron Range mining in Minnesota has 3 times the rates of mesothelioma than is expected. And as a lung doctor, I've taken care of patients with mesothelioma from time of service, from mining. Certainly black lung and silicosis are things that we see. These are the costs of doing mineral mining in addition to the asthma, fires, and smoke exposure that we put people through with our refineries, with our oil production. We do not take into account the human impacts of these challenges. And so I just want to make it also clear, there were some questions about subsidies, and the International Monetary Fund estimates there's approximately $754 billion in indirect subsidies in the US every year for oil and gas production. And the IRA, I'm just going to ask you, Ms. Gibson, did the Inflation Reduction Act provide subsidies indefinitely for renewable energy?
No, Dr. Dexter.
Thank you. I would agree with that. I think we certainly have subsidized oil and gas production. In fact, we have abandoned mines and different infrastructure across this country. And a stranded asset is an investment that loses value or becomes unusable before the end of its expected useful life. And in the energy context, that could mean we build a new methane gas plant and finance it over 40 years, but we can't use it after 10 years because it's cheaper to use renewable energy. And that is the trajectory that we are seeing as we continue to improve the technology for renewables. Maybe we require it to be shut down to deal with a climate emergency. These are costs that I believe are not being taken into account in these amazing numbers that we are being convinced of today. I wanted to ask Mr. Dayaratna, sorry if I did not say your name correctly, does the model that you reference in your testimony account for the economic risks of stranded fossil fuel assets as the world continues to pursue decarbonization efforts?
I'm sorry, the question was about the risks of stranded fossil fuel assets?
Just the economic risk. If we are building these methane plants or CO2 capture plants and then we strand them, as we know this is happening across the country, there's stranded infrastructure that then has to be cleaned up by the government because the industry is not doing that. Is that something that has happened in the past?
The Energy Information Agency's National Energy Modeling System, I believe that they do not incorporate for that. But at the same time, I think what you're getting, okay, well anyway, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to comment on broader questions regarding the public health questions that I think you might be getting at, that I think you suggest are not incorporated in the analysis, which I'm happy to address.
So let's talk about the stranded infrastructure. As we are building, we're talking about taking diesel turbines off the coast of Puerto Rico and other things that have to be created because there's a shortage, correct? So if we create infrastructure and it is abandoned, is that cost accounted for? Because we have a history of doing that throughout this country. There's stranded oil wells across this country, correct?
So between the business as usual case and the high oil and gas case in the simulations that I discussed, as well as the carbon reduction simulations, those variables were all considered equal between the cases. So I think it's like comparing apples and oranges to ask a question like that, to be honest.
So you don't think it's relevant that we subsidize
when
the
you're
development
computing
of
the
this
deltas,
infrastructure?
Excuse me?
When we are subsidizing development, and with infrastructure, there's tax deductions. We are certainly
Oh, I see
subsidizing
your question. My personal opinion is that there shouldn't be subsidies, period, whatsoever in the marketplace, if that's what you're asking.
I appreciate that perspective, and with that, I'm over time, so I yield back. Thank you.